Kaply. That's like the most common Klingon phrase, everyone. Hello and welcome to Outside the Fox, where we explore what's happening online and why it matters. I'm Kim Horcher.
My name's Ajay Patel.
And today we are celebrating 20 years of Firefox. And for that, we are talking to someone who has been there all along to talk about his anecdotes, his experiences, how things have changed in 20 years. Please welcome Mike Kaply.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, how are y'all doing?
So tell us about your role at Mozilla. Have you been there since the beginning, or tell us more?
I'm on the business team at Mozilla. My title is technical partner lead. Basically, I act as a translator between the business folks and the technical folks. But I've been a member of the Mozilla community for over 25 years. I've been working on Firefox since it began. And I started out as a developer. And so I've worked on every aspect of Mozilla and Firefox.
Can you talk about the difference between, what people may know of as Mozilla and Firefox?
When Mozilla was first released as open source, you couldn't actually do anything with it. It was just the source code. And over time, it became a browser. But it wasn't just a browser. Mozilla was a web browser. It was a news reader. You could build web pages. You could check your email. So it was more than just a web browser. And there was a group of people within the community that felt like Mozilla was too big. And so they sought to take and build a smaller browser that was more streamlined. And so that group decided to take the same technology that was used to build Mozilla and build Firefox.
So back in the early 00s, maybe people weren't thinking as much about the ethos of Firefox, maybe not so much about being open source or caring about privacy. Where did that come from? Where did this heart of what is behind Firefox come from?
It came from the fact that there was a belief that if Netscape gave the source code to everybody as Mozilla, that everybody would work together to make it the best browser. We wanted to involve everybody in being successful because there was really no good way to compete against Microsoft as just a company. And so the thought was, if we could bring together everybody to work together on building a browser, we would effectively have developers from all over the world working together to make a browser.
What did the tech industry really look like when you first entered into the space?
Well, there was dial-up. There was no mobile phones. It's a very different time in a way to think about how, we didn't have fancy websites. We didn't have YouTube videos, very basic internet, not a lot of major brands online. And we certainly didn't have the internet everywhere we went.
What made you think to join this particular team, especially in the days of, let's say, dial-up and people not being incredibly web literate?
I was working at IBM at the time, and I got an opportunity to join like a very early team that was building a browser at IBM. And it just seemed like a natural fit for what I was doing and the idea of being involved in technology that was just that early. We were working on web browsers, back Netscape days, like very early time. And so got to be a part of that history.
During those early days, did you foresee that it was going to reach the magnitude that it has today?
I mean, there was always an inkling that things were going to get that way. I joke that the moment I knew things were going to be like this is when you started seeing like web addresses on cereal boxes. It was just weird to think about that, the internet became physical and everywhere you went, you saw, go to this website. But it would definitely be hard to predict where we ended up today with the ubiquitous of the internet and basically everything, all of life online.
At what point did you care more about, let's say, open standards and developing this browser?
One of the interesting things about when I worked at IBM is that we were very internal focused. Like at a big company like that, you don't share anything that you're doing. And one of the neatest thing about working at Mozilla was the fact that we could work out in the open. And that's what made it interesting to me, is that being a part of the Mozilla community meant that I didn't just work with my coworkers at IBM. I got to work with people all over the world on developing this browser. So it's always been near to my heart to be a member of that community.
How did you start working on that? I mean, was it harder with the web as it was in those days?
When we first started working on the web, it was very closed, right? You've got to picture, everything was proprietary. So at my job, we were trying to make Netscape work on IBM computers. So we worked directly with the Netscape to make the code work. And everything was very secretive. And then one day, Netscape decided we're going to give away the source code. And for us, what that meant is that we didn't have to, it wasn't a secret anymore. And so we were able to participate actively. And so for me, it was just my day-to-day job doing that work. And then over time, I got to participate more and more in the Mozilla community as a whole.
So I always heard about the early browser wars. So could you please tell me more about that? Because I was kind of out of the loop. I didn't really pay much attention. So please shed some light on that.
After Netscape released their browser, Microsoft really needed a way to compete. And so they created Internet Explorer. And there was a real concern that Internet Explorer would kind of own the browser market because of how big Microsoft was. So Netscape and Microsoft went back and forth releasing browsers really quickly to try to outdo each other. And that's kind of what we consider the browser wars, is when they were fighting against each other. And then Netscape decided to release the open source from Mozilla. They created the Mozilla browser, and then that eventually led to Firefox. And Firefox took enough market share away from Internet Explorer that we knew that Internet Explorer was not going to win the browser wars.
It's almost like the competition drove it to be what it was, what it became, and what it is today.
Oh, it really did. Because at that time, there was only one browser, that people started using. Internet Explorer was kind of taking over the world. And Firefox, by having tab browsing and other innovations, really encouraged people to have an alternative Internet Explorer, and that's how it became successful. We look at the way things are today in terms of browser markets, and Firefox enabled that. Firefox enabled the competition that we have today, because before we had a browser like Firefox, there wasn't a lot of competition.
Well, Mike, you've been around for 20 years with Mozilla. Can you tell me about some of your most memorable moments in the developer community over the years?
Some of my most memorable moments are when we've gotten to get together in person. Some of the cool things we've done over the years is we've had developers get together and talk about what we were doing with Firefox. And we've even had big events, whether it be in Whistler or other places in the world, again, where we got together. So to me, in person, meeting people, getting together is the thing that I enjoy most about our community.
Could you tell me a little bit more about the tools you used in the early days and how maybe manual things were? And then now with the modernization of tools, how much more advanced they've become. Has your job gotten easier? Has it just, kind of progressed the same? What's happened around the actual work and the difficulty behind it?
A lot of the technology we take for granted nowadays, like really advanced code editors for developing that automatically does things for you. We didn't have those kind of editors. The tools that we use and people think about GitHub and how you manage source code. Well, managing source code was much more difficult. And a lot of the things that we had to automate systems and things, it was all homegrown things that we built. So The nice thing now is that a lot of the things that we use are off-the-shelf tools that would just work better instead of having to roll everything ourselves.
So when you first met with other people in Mozilla in the early days, you met them online, right?
In the early days, we used IRC. Most people nowadays might not remember that, but it was called Internet Relay Chat, and it was really the earliest form of chatting on the internet. So that was the primary way that everybody interacted. We had a big IRC community, and everybody talked about the work on IRC.
What was it like when you finally met these people in person?
Oh, I loved meeting people in person. It was great to put a face to the name. The funniest thing is you realize that you saw people's handles and you didn't know why people were named a certain way. So you learned that they had nicknames on the internet, and you got to meet them in real life and find out that you were pronouncing their name wrong or that you were calling them the wrong thing. But it was, like I said, it was the best thing about it was being able to meet these people in person. And that was always a great thing.
I have to ask, what was your online handle?
I'm boring. So mine was always M. Kaply. But what's funny about that is there were people that thought it sounded Klingon. So they thought it was like M. Kapla or something like that.
Yes, Kapla. That's like the most common Klingon phrase, everyone. Someone out there understands me. You do.
So, of course, we cover everything that's happening online. And I wanted to ask you about the topic of AI and maybe how it has made an impact on Firefox, or maybe something in the future that you can share with us that may shape a future tool that we'll see.
We're working on some various things inside Firefox related to AI. One of the things we've done recently is we have a Firefox Labs project where you can have AI chatbots in the sidebar inside of Firefox. So we're giving users a way to use the chatbots they're already using inside of Firefox. But we're also looking at what we can do to use AI to make the browser better. One very specific thing that we have inside Firefox is you can translate web pages between different languages without going over the web. And that's done using specially trained models, AI models that know how to translate between languages. We're also looking at using it for adding alternate text to images in PDFs, like we're looking at using it for accessibility. So our goal with AI is to look at very specific use cases that really fit with who Mozilla is and how we feel about the internet, and use it for the best.
Right. Because
Awesome.
it's easy to go wrong.
It's very easy to go wrong. When we work on stuff like this, we take our time with it because we want to make sure we get it right.
What other things excite you about the future to come at Firefox?
I'm excited for just generally what the future holds. The web is always changing. Things are always evolving. And a big part of what we do is figuring out what's next and how to build it inside of Firefox. So there's no specific technologies other than AI that I'm looking forward to, but I love the work that we do and the impact that we make on the web.
Mike, one last time, is there anything you wanted to share with the community before we kind of close this out?
I just want to say thank you to the community for all the support you've given us over the years. We appreciate how everybody cares about Firefox, and we're not going anywhere. So we want to encourage everybody to keep using Firefox.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us and for all the hard work you do every day for the past 20 years.
To 20 more years.
You bet. Thanks, y'all.
All right, that is all the time we have with Mike, unfortunately, but we are celebrating 20 years of Firefox. Thank you all for joining us. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and download Firefox because it's the best. See you next time.